Kind of nice to see some clouds across the area this morning. I got a weak front to kind of push through the area. Gave us some breezy winds last night and a few spits of rain, but that was about it. You can see these large radiating lines, rolls of clouds that have come through. We'll look at them on satellite a little bit later. And then they extend off to the east, but you can also see the slope under here. Planes haven't been quite as numerous today, but they still have been low and slow. You see the bottom of the cloud here, it comes along a little bit and then boom, catches a wave, catches an angle, and there's a rather sharp edge right in there. And so we've got some waves kind of stimulating the development of these clouds this morning. And then they extend off to the north. Sure be nice to get some rain. It'd be really, really nice. You can hear a prop job headed into the south. Otherwise, we'll see what we get out of the storm. Stay tuned. So we're watching these waves come through today. Again, we're just on the southern edge of what could have been which was a season changer up north, bringing in some cool air, kind of shunting the monsoon moisture down here off to the east and back into Mexico. But I'm watching the bottoms of these, which typically is an altocumulus deck. Very, very common. You can see these little discs, these little streaks. And this is where the wave action is pushing this storm along very, very quickly. And it'll be curious to watch this on time lapse, how these streaks manifest, and with the clouds racing along, curling along the tops. You can see a little rippling track there. But mostly off to the west, where I've been shooting over the course of the day, we've got bluer skies now. Still a few ripples, but all in all, this thing is kind of winding down. We are getting into the sunnier part of the day, so we may get some minor convective development. But it's kind of these tracks. This is what I'm interested in pointing out. This is where we're seeing the atmosphere pushed beyond its normal bounds from what these clouds would normally manifest in a wholly natural environment. So we'll see those on time lapse. There's a whole lot of chemtrails out over the Pacific. We'll look at those out on satellite here in just a little bit. All right, everybody. Coming up on 3:25 p.m. Eastern Time here on the 7th of September, and I've got the camera pointed at the satellite imagery. This is the infrared imagery off the west coast of the U.S. with Washington State, Oregon, Idaho in here. We've had a storm kind of zip on through. You can see it departing off to the east, but they're already working on the next storm off the northwest coast. And almost all of this activity, with maybe save for this area here and this area here, is chemtrail cloudiness. And you can see this chicken foot that they've spread out with a center point right in there. That is not something you're going to find via contrail action. And then more development up here as we get towards the Alaskan peninsula. And so they're continuing to line up out here. And I'll come off to the upper air analysis. This is from weathermaps.org, wxmaps.org. And so we're looking at the analysis. Let me make sure, yeah, this is this morning, 12Z on Friday the 7th. Back off the coast of Oregon, and we have a minor low in here. When you have the spinning around the lows, you're going to get the red zones. Those are where there's vorticity or spin in the atmosphere, and there's that change in direction, change in wind speed that you're going to see the vorticity, and it is these areas that are crucial for cloud and storm development. We've got a high kind of folded over with the polar jet stream up here, and then a little weak low developing in here. So this is the area they're working on, the northern edge of this low pressure zone. All right, so here's the infrared imagery. Let's go to the water vapor imagery. And this is the little wider view. I'm going to come back off to the coast. This is the Alaska regional image. And you can see the imagery happening here. So we've got the drier air here beginning to curl into this developing low. There's already moisture in place. Let me kind of darken this up a touch for you so we can see these trails pop. You can see those trails popping. And then here's the other activity on the northern edge of Vancouver Island before we get up to, say, Juneau, Alaska. Here's Alaska up here. And then we're going to come off Hawaii's down in here. So then there's more trails. In fact, this activity off the coast of the Aleutians and down into the mid-Pacific is intense, intense. And it's so focused, and so focused on just this zone where you have this low that's trying to fold on in, that it cannot be just regular contrail traffic. Then we go even farther out into the Pacific, off the coast of Russia. Kamchatka's out here, and we're seeing these chemtrail stripes showing up as well. So the entirety of this northern Pacific region continues to be engineered this afternoon. All right, we're going to go to the visible imagery, and we'll kind of step back so you can get the land. Here's Idaho, Washington, Oregon, and I'm interested in this out here. You see these whiter stripes zooming in. These are the ship trails. These are not contrails. You can see these two ships, one here, one here. They change in direction, so they're going in parallel to one another. So they're displaying some intent. But here's what the contrails, the chemtrails, look like from the visible satellite imagery. And you can see how the trails are spreading and fanning out, creating this cloud deck. And they're probably engineering this zone right in here. So there's something that they're very intent, chemtrail, see how it's spread out. So there's something they're very intent on engineering out across the North Pacific. So we'll see how, back to the forecast or back to the analysis, how this storm off the west coast, we skip ahead 24 hours, begins to develop, how this guy strengthens. So we'll see how the model predicts this storm to develop versus how it actually happens. But what we're seeing is the first exceedingly energetic North Pacific storm beginning to take shape and impinging upon the Pacific Northwest as we get to Monday morning. This is 6 p.m. Central Monday morning. And then it develops and moves on inward further. But this is going to bring the first frost, the first snows to the Canadian Rockies, and this will be a season changer. And then a high develops in very quickly. But nevertheless, this is the magnitude of the storm that they're beginning to work here off the coast of Alaska. So they're either amplifying it or they're squashing it. And it's hard to know which. By the evidence of the trail, all we can determine is that they are engineering it. In time, we'll figure out if it's to strengthen it or weaken it. And we'll have to look at the National Weather Service to see their discussions on what they see happening out in the Pacific over the next couple of days. But nevertheless, the existence of these trails and extensive persistent trails at that are evidence today out across the Pacific. All right, everybody, keep looking up. Look at all these wave clouds and how they're run this way and not across the mountains. And then at the end, they can't really be wave clouds in the traditional sense because you can see the edges are boiling. Now I got to get focused here. Here we go. You can see how these edges are disturbed. And then you can see these edges like we saw the other day, kind of like this little shelf with this overhanging lip. They're all tubular, parallel and tubular in nature. And then underneath them, we've got the cumulus forming. Not right. This isn't right. In fact, on this side, get the sun out of my eyes. You can see these puffy sort of cumulus, altocumulus coming together. You've got two very separate cloud types next to each other, but at the same altitude. So we've got something that's unusual going on. I've got time lapse on this today, so that's going to be fascinating. And what I'm seeing often are cumulus underneath this dome. So you've got this very fast-moving dome. In fact, on top of it, you can see the little waves, the little cusps, the little curls right in here. And if you watch those closely, you'll see those racing along the top of these quote-unquote lenticulars. And then as this curve takes shape, then the cumulus curls up underneath. In fact, the cumulus will start at this back part, and the bottom part will crawl towards the west, and then the top will peel off towards the east. Fascinating. Underneath this way, I have them. You can see these curling edges, not typical with lenticulars. We come up here and we can see the stripes coming off the top of them. And as we look closely, you'll see the very strong wave action driving them off to the east. Time lapse is going to be fascinating on this day, and with the cumulus tucked underneath the top of them. I don't know. I think these traditional weathermen better wake up. You better wake up, guys, because you're at the sleep of the wheel, and at some point you're going to look awfully, awfully stupid. Look at these. Look at these. The cumulus is tucked underneath this cutout. The stripes showing that the air is just driven forcefully over this wave, and the cumulus curls up electrically underneath them. Electrically. And then the curls showing you just how fast this air is driven over this lenticular. Driven. It's forced over. Here's another close-up of some of these waves that are rolling off the top of these lenticulars. There's some layer of the atmosphere that has been accelerated, pushed through, forced through, and then the lenticular has to take shape under that vorticity of this rolling cloud above. One a little bit closer, you can still see the structure of the forced waves overhead. They're not all uniform. But we're now underneath this wave as it propagates towards the east. And there's still different sections. So there's a wave rolling this way, and then the forced coming up towards the east. Alright, I'm going to bias exposure down a little bit because I want to bring out this. And this is not nearly as profound. I'll insert a still picture in here. We've got the shield cloud here, the lenticular, but then underneath it we've got a curling. And I'm just seeing a plane come up. Just seeing a plane. There he is. Let's see if we can't get a paint scheme on him. Oh, come on. Come on, there he is. So he's I'll look at it on the big screen to figure out who he is. But nonetheless, he's low and slow. And so they're working. They're observing this energetic environment. So we'll see how this curl shows up. And you got these stripes coming in off the lenticular. Strongly so. Strongly so. But still, there's lots of planes investigating this. Alright, be well. Notice the big loops. Not much to say. See the clouds that ended up in the south. Yeah. So I'm looking at this geometry right in there. Edge of the Thunderhead arc, and then it steps down. And Modest back up to the west. Cool. In the time lapse, we'll see these thunderheads. Again, we got a 90-degree angle thing here, but we'll see the clouds ride a wave down, or the moisture ride a wave down. It literally strips the downward momentum out of the sky. And so we'll see the striping action. The rain's off in the distance out in here. And then the clear skies overhead. And the striations. The ribbling. And again, in the time-lapse imagery, and here we'll see the holes in and around the thunderheads, and they always act to strip the clouds and to direct the rain into focus places off in the distance. So look at this. Square here, and the cloud coming down the side. Seeing the lips on the edges of the squares. Right up there. 1, 2, 3. On the edges of the squares, they're hooks. This guy's come down, and then it weeps in. This is not right. Alright guys, I was looking at this earlier today out in the mid-Pacific, and we're seeing some intense chemtrailing. We'll start off the coast of California first, where we can see these trails here now beginning to work the way up, and the clouds forming as a result of all of the activity that has been laid out there. Off on the corner of the screen you can see the trails up and through here. Many trails. Alright, we'll continue to step this out. Here we are off the coast of California again with this weak low pressure, summer monsoon across the desert southwest, and yet the trails piercing into the dry conditions off the coast of California. And then look at this. Look at this. They're just blazing out here as this weak low is beginning to take shape. It isn't going to become a big event, but nevertheless it will grow. Now let's step out here. We're going to take the much larger view into the Gulf of Alaska, off the coast of the U.S., and this is what I'm amazed at. The trails here off the north coast of Vancouver Island, and all of this engineering that is happening here with just hundreds and hundreds of trails. You can see how one morphs into clouds here, and then another set begins, and then even out of the southern end, we see more beginning to light up. We come up, move to the end of the Aleutians, and then we can see these trails all in through here. A large swath of them. There's got to be 100, 150 planes out over the mid-Pacific working this program singularly. And I think as we go to, let's go to water vapor. Let's go to a 48 image loop. And then we'll do some enhancement here. Let's do vapor 1. And we'll be able to see the planes. And I'll slow this down just a little bit so we can get a little bit of a better beat on it. I do want some enhancement though. Vapor 2. Alright. There's the trail there. Look at them all. So there's just many working out there. I'm telling you, this is a massive global program. Utterly incredible in its magnitude and its scope. There's my P2 camera shooting the time lapse upstairs. Gives me a nice shot of the western view sky, which is mostly what I use. Turned this on because I heard a low flying plane and I never did spot it. Sounded like an MD-90 at the largest. It could have been a little bit smaller than that, but it was relatively low. But it looks like the weather here is winding down. Probably not going to be much else that goes on for the rest of the night, as we've got sunset on the western horizon, and it's probably going to be a coolish night. Cool on the dry side of this, the north side of this front. Still have a lot of churning in the atmosphere and some speed shears, I like to call it. You can see these clouds, silhouetted against the sunset. But nevertheless, we'll get this up and posted for Friday, 7th of September, 2010. Big chemtrailing out in the Pacific as we observed today. And you saw, we'll kind of see how that plays out in this first fall-ish like storm. It'll blast into the Pacific Northwest and Western Canada over the course of this week. We'll see how that portends for this winter. It'd sure be nice if we had an El Nino set up and we got some rain into the western U.S. That would be very welcome. In case you can see how these clouds are tendril in nature. They're little filaments. Filament-like clouds. Rather than bubbling condensation. They're filamentary in nature. Alright everybody. Keep looking up.